How's it going, everybody? I wanted to show you a really neat thing that anybody can do at home if you're trying to grow some gardens and you've been in the market to buy fertilizer over the last several years, especially here over the last year or so. You'll know how expensive fertilizer is, especially if you're trying to buy the organic fertilizer, which is what I recommend for anything that you would eat. But even, just the fish emulsion, the organic fish emulsion brand is just gone through the roof. It's skyrocketed in price, and for somebody like myself or others that have so many things to fertilize, we would go broke if we had to buy organic fertilizer. So really the only means, and the one that nobody wants you to know about, are the means that you can make at home. The organic fertilizer that is just so easy to make and is just so jam-packed full of nutrition, and you can make it very quickly and have it on hand. And I just wanted to show you how easy it is to make fertilizer. As you can see, I've got a 5-gallon bucket here, and beneath this mesquite tree I have a whole bunch of the dreaded Bermuda grass. And the Bermuda grass is very high in nitrogen. It has quite a few medicinal properties as well. If you research it, there's all kinds of excellent things about it. But it makes a great fertilizer. Actually, any weed that you grow in your yard would make fabulous fertilizer. Also, any kitchen scraps, any fruit or vegetables, you can gather all those up. Your used coffee grounds from your morning coffee. I keep a Folgers coffee mug, like an old coffee container, in the kitchen, and I'll just fill that up with all of our kitchen scraps, and I'll bring it out and I'll dump it around trees, or I'll turn it into fertilizer as what I'm making here, or I'll compost it, and it's just an excellent amendment to make free fertilizer. So really all you need to do is just grab up a bucket and start filling it up with weeds, with kitchen scraps, with anything that you're growing in your yard. The more nutritious it is, the better. If you're growing plants like comfrey or moringa or the Mexican sunflower, all the better. Add some of that into it. If you're able to grab any manures, such as chicken manure, goat manure, anything along those lines, put a little bit of that in it as well. It won't hurt anything. And so once you fill up a bucket with weeds, and it could just be straight weeds from your landscape. It could be bagged grass clippings if you're mowing your yard. Just fill up a bucket about halfway, 3/4 full of weeds, and then add some water into it. If you have water that's dechlorinated, all the better. But if not, then you can just add tap water, and it will emit or release the gases over the course of a few days. But I like to try to keep some of these trash cans on hand where I've got them filled with water, just straight tap water, but by the time that I go to use them, they're already dechlorinated. And I'll fill the bucket about halfway full of the water with the weeds, and I'll just allow it to sit for a period of time. As you can see here, this one has been sitting for about a week, and as you can see, the water is nice and dark, and you can see the bubbles, and so it's starting to turn good. And it will take a few weeks, and it's just a process, and you can keep the process going. I'll show you one that I've got here. This is my main liquid fertilizer. It's what the Koreans call jadam, and this is everything that I throw in here It's just a big, large, probably, I don't know, 70 gallon, 80 gallon trash container. I don't even know how large it is. But it's just full of scraps. You can see bananas, tomatoes. I'll throw weeds in here. I'll throw everything that I can get my hands on into this container. I don't throw any bread or meats or dairy, but I've actually read that you can with moderation. So don't be afraid of such things. And ratios and all this, you know, if you're composting browns to greens and all this stuff, it's overly complicated and it doesn't need to be. Just grab anything that you've got on hand, whether it be a small 5-gallon bucket or a 30-gallon trash container or even an 80-gallon trash container, and fill it with water and start throwing stuff into it. And you can use this on everything that you grow, and you will just see that it is so nutritious. And so what I'll do here is I'll grab my little Folgers or Mountain House, whatever coffee mug there, and that's probably about a gallon size, and I'll fill it up with this. And when I go to use it, I will grab a 5-gallon bucket full of this water, and I will just pour that coffee container into the 5-gallon bucket, and so that dilutes it. And you know, the dilution ratios aren't critical. Some people say 4-to-1, some will say 10-to-1. Sometimes you'll hear people say 20 or 50-to-1. You know, it's really not critical. I would just play with it and see what works best for you, but that's probably about 5 parts water to 1 part liquid fertilizer from what I'm doing here, and that's fine. If I see something that's really in need, sometimes if it's in ground, I'll just run straight fertilizer in a 5-gallon bucket, and I won't even mix it with water, and I'll do a root trench around whatever it is, and it does perfectly fine. So you can't burn your crops. Now, if you've got, you know, little dainty annuals such as brassicas, lettuces, and things that you would eat, you know, these fertilizers are full of bacteria, both aerobic and anaerobic bacteria, and that's what gives the life. But those are much valued additions within your soil, and so you wouldn't want to foliar feed this directly on something like a lettuce that you were going to eat that day. And if you did, then you would want to thoroughly wash it. But this is more or less, for me, as I use it as a soil feeding method, as a root drench. I do feed this to potted plants in my greenhouse, but I will make sure I do dilute it. I won't use pure jadam onto anything that I've got within, you know, a potted plant. I just think that they would be a little bit more vulnerable, but it could work just, you know, using it straight. But I usually don't need to. I usually just have a watering can. So in that instance, what I will do for potted plants is I'll take my little 1 gallon and I'll fill it full of the jadam, and then I'll pour that 1 gallon into this 30 gallons. So I'm actually diluting it 30-to-1 for potted plants. And then I'll use my container, and I'll do that like once a week. And so, you know, sometimes I've heard of the Koreans doing that every time they feed their potted plants. They'll just continuously do that. But I like to use my hose to water my plants more often than not. And so I'll just do this every once in a blue moon, or not a blue moon, like once a week. And I'll just use this container, and then I'll dip my my watering can directly into this container and start watering. So that's how easy it is. With the particulates within the liquid fertilizer, you can use like a 5-gallon paint strainer. that you can get at any big box store or online. Or I've got like a little fish net that I've got down here, serves the same purpose. I don't know if you can see the fish net down there, but if I get any particulates into that little 1-gallon container, then I'll just use the fish net to scoop them out, and then that way it's pure liquid, and then you don't have to worry about clogging up your watering container or anything like that. But you don't have to be this elaborate. The reason I've got such a large setup here is because I've got acreage to fertilize. So depending on your scale, you can scale it down, and you could just do 1 or 2 or 3 5-gallon buckets and just have them going in succession. And so once you have something like this set up, where you've still got your hard matter in there, but you've got some nice brown liquid fertilizer, you can use a paint strainer and just strain all that liquid into a clean 5-gallon bucket, and then you could package that up into smaller units, like little 2-liter bottles or whatever you have on hand. And then you could just mix that just like the fish emulsion, you know, where it's 1 or 2 tablespoons per gallon, and that would be a good dilution rate. Or if you want to give something an extra boost, put a little bit more into it. It's just really that simple, folks. It doesn't need to be complicated. You can make fertilizer with everything you've got on hand. And so why are we buying outrageously priced fertilizers when we can make it on site, on hand, for free of cost? So I hope this video helps you. I hope it finds you well today. If you have any questions whatsoever about anything I do here, how I make any of my fertilizers, feel free to ask below and I'll be happy to help you out. I hope you have a great day. God bless.